The National Desk, America's News, now.
Severe weather and excessive heat, where in the U.S. they're getting a double warning.
We agreed to the same rules. I don't know. It doesn't matter to me. I'd rather have it probably on, but the agreement was that it would be the same as it was last time. In that case, it was muted.
A debate about muting mics could end up silencing both candidates, where Trump and Harris agree and disagree about upcoming debate rules. Then toxic apple juice, the health problems the FDA is sounding the alarm over as thousands of cases of the popular children's drink are recalled. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. Right now, as we come on the air, severe storm warnings over western parts of Iowa, the Twin Cities of Minnesota, and also central and northern Wisconsin. These cells expected to bring large to very large hail, damaging winds with gusts exceeding 50 miles per hour, and the possibility of tornadoes. More than 23 million Americans are in the path of these storms that will continue moving east over the next few hours. More than 58 million Americans under heat alerts today, with as feels like temperatures in the Midwest approaching or exceeding 110 degrees in parts of Nebraska and Illinois, with triple digits from Kansas and Missouri north to Minnesota and Wisconsin. These excessive high temps will continue tomorrow before cooling down a bit later in the week. And new tonight, special counsel Jack Smith now urging a federal appeals court to reinstate the classified documents case against Donald Trump that was dismissed by Judge Eileen Cannon last month. Judge Cannon sided with the Trump team after they argued that Smith's appointment as special counsel was unconstitutional. The Atlanta-based 11th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals is hearing Smith's challenge with no timetable on how long it will take for them to decide. Trump is on the campaign trail today, where he spoke to National Guard officers in Detroit, thanking them for their service and calling the National Guard America's first and last line of defense. He also criticized the Biden administration on issues like immigration.
Our country is being destroyed by a radical political class that sends our guardsmen and women to defend the borders of distant foreign nations while they surrender our own borders to an invasion right here at home, the likes of which we've never seen before.
Earlier today, Trump visited Arlington National Cemetery to commemorate 3 years since a terrorist bomb killed 13 American service members outside the Kabul airport in Afghanistan. His Democratic opponent, meantime, Vice President Kamala Harris, issued a statement calling the 13 service member heroes devoted patriots. Harris plans to launch a bus tour with running mate Tim Walz in Georgia on Wednesday. Her campaign said she would do a sit-down interview before the month's end. The Trump and Harris campaigns are arguing about the rules for the ABC presidential debate slated to take place on September 10th. A spokesperson for Vice President Harris says she does not want microphones to be muted. Former President Trump says he'd probably also prefer the mics on, but that he accepted this debate under the same conditions as the last one, when candidates' mics were muted when it wasn't their turn. Trump is also raising questions about whether he'll even participate, sharply criticizing ABC News.
But when I looked at the hostility of that, I said, why am I doing it? Let's do it with another network. I want to do it. You know, I won because of debates. Ask Biden.
A group of lawmakers investigating the assassination attempt of former President Donald Trump traveled to Butler, Pennsylvania to see the site of the shooting firsthand. They have a long list of questions for the federal law enforcement officials that were involved, 5 of whom have been placed on modified duty. National correspondent Atral Nashar reports.
6 weeks after the attempt on former President Donald Trump's life, members of a bipartisan congressional task force are visiting the scene of the crime.
There's really no substitute for being on site, looking at the ground where all of this happened.
Butler, Pennsylvania is in Republican Congressman Mike Kelly's district. He's leading the task force and says the decision to hold the rally at the Butler Farm Show grounds never made sense to him.
I said, no, you can't do it there. That site is too small. The entry and exit is going to be difficult.
Kelly, who was at the rally, and ranking member Democratic Congressman Jason Crow say they want to know how the site was chosen, who was involved in preparation, and what information did they have? Did Secret Service have enough resources? And the question on just about everyone's mind:
why was the roof not secured? I mean, it's an obvious line of sight.
The Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee is also investigating. Republican Senator Ron Johnson claims it's not moving fast enough.
The Secret Service, FBI are basically dragging their feet. They're stonewalling us. We've gotten some transcribed interviews, but the documents we request are heavily redacted.
The FBI tells us accusations like that are inaccurate and unfounded. The FBI has been working closely with our law enforcement partners to conduct a thorough investigation into the shooting. And we have followed normal procedures in the handling of the crime scene and evidence. And a Secret Service spokesperson tells us they have provided the committee with more than 1,000 pages of responsive documentation, and over the past 2 weeks have made employees available to committee staff for transcribed interviews. They add, quote, "Our desire to learn from this failure and ensure that it never happens again is unwavering, and we welcome respective oversight efforts such as those by the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee." Lawmakers investigating the shootings say that their main goals, of course, is to make sure this doesn't happen again, but also, Mira, to restore Americans' trust that their candidates are going to be protected.
Yeah, that is critical. And we just heard from the lawmakers who toured the site of the shooting. What were their takeaways?
Well, they said being there in person was extremely helpful. Some had been there before, but this was their first time as a big group, and it showed them just how close the building that the shooter was on was to where the former president was standing. How many lines of sight beyond that were insecure? There's certainly still more questions than answers, and Mike Kelly, who leads the task force, said it is going to be a slow process. They're expected to wrap up their investigation by mid-December.
But certainly a lot more to come on this issue. Atrell Nashar reporting live from D.C. for us. Thank you, as always. Kroger and Albertsons in court today defending their proposed $25 billion merger. The two largest grocery store chains in the nation announced their deal in 2022, but the Federal Trade Commission sued to block the sale, saying it will stifle competition, raise grocery prices, and hurt workers' wages and benefits. The case is expected to last about 3 weeks before the presiding federal judge will issue their final ruling. Operations at the Seattle-Tacoma International Airport in Washington returned to normal today following a huge cyber attack over the weekend. According to FlightAware.com, only 2% of flights have been delayed into or out of the airport today, so that's good news. On Saturday, a cyber attack caused outages that required agents to manually check in all passengers and log checked bags. This created hours of delays for thousands of passengers. Authorities say no passenger data was stolen. An investigation is ongoing as to who was behind the hack and what, if any, information was targeted.
You know, I have an Alaska credit card. They have all of my information. They do the facial scanning. You know, there's a lot of information, and so how it's used can be pretty concerning. I had no idea that that's happening, but it's also something that I realize is just kind of systemic right now.
Jury deliberation has begun in the murder trial for Robert Tellis, the former Las Vegas area county politician accused of murdering an investigative journalist. Tellis's defense team told the jury there is no corroborating evidence to prove Tellis was at the scene of the crime, while the prosecution addressed Tellis's testimony last week, which they called incredible and not in a good way. Deliberations began about 2 hours ago. New tonight, rapper Sean Kingston and his mother pleading not guilty on state charges of grand theft and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. The pair are accused of defrauding victims of high-end vehicles and jewelry, among other items. If convicted, they both could receive sentences of more than 10 years in prison. And tonight, we are tracking a concoction of drugs that have hit the Midwest in a big way, and they've been found to cause severe wounds on the skin, as well as an increased risk of an overdose. The National Desk's Tyler Madden with a look at how this drug mixture is popping up in different forms across Ohio.
we're seeing more and more of these mixtures in the Ohio illicit drug supply.
2 new drug mixtures are popping up across the Buckeye State. Trank dope and benzodope are different combinations of sedatives added to opioids like fentanyl and heroin.
The drug supply is not like it used to be. It's not this organic drug supply where you had coca and you turned it into cocaine, or you had poppy seeds and you turned it into heroin. It is really a chemical lab that's on the street now.
The Ohio Narcotics Intelligence Center reports from 2021 to 2023, they've seen 8 times the number of drug samples containing trank dope. They've seen more than double the amount of samples with benzodope.
It's really dangerous. So you had fentanyl, which was dangerous enough.
Simon says dealers are doing this to increase the strength of the drugs.
In itself, the xylazine and medetomidine are dangerous. They're going to suppress your heart rate, your lungs. Add fentanyl on top of that, which does the same thing. You're increasing the chances of overdosing or dying.
It's showing up in many different forms, from pills to powder.
So from the trank side, that would be the xylazines. And when xylazine hit Puerto Rico in the 90s and early 2000s, that's what they called it, trank. It was almost like a tranquilizer. They called it a zombie drug because people were kind of standing up out in the street and just kind of nodding off.
The reaction can also lead to some severe skin wounds.
The danger with xylazine is that it causes these severe wounds that are very painful.
Simon says Narcan isn't as effective on these drug mixtures as it only works to reverse an opioid overdose.
We recommend always that you don't just give Narcan. You always call 911. You're always prepared to do CPR.
Simon says users can still have breathing and heart issues from the effects of the sedatives mixed in.
I've never seen a drug that can morph with any other drug as much as fentanyl.
These 2 combinations are just a part of that bigger problem.
Well, coming up, 3 major storms hitting the Pacific Ocean at once, the severe weather some Americans are now preparing for. Then a big change in plans for the 2 Starliner astronauts stuck on the International Space Station, why they'll need to stay in space until next year. And later, concerns over mosquito-borne diseases growing. The steps one state is urging people to take to reduce their risk. Right now, emergency crews are working to clean up damage left by Tropical Storm Hone that passed the Big Island of Hawaii as a Category 1 hurricane yesterday. In some places, it got 18 inches of rain and thousands of people lost power. The storm is expected to continue moving away from the main Hawaiian islands. Tonight, forecasters turning their attention to Hurricane Gilma that's now headed towards Hawaii. AccuWeather predicts possible thunderstorms and strong wind as soon as Tuesday night. Gilma is expected to weaken into a tropical depression later in the week. But yet another storm also threatening the eastern Pacific. Tropical storm Hector is at the southern tip of Baja California, forecast to strengthen over the next few days in the Pacific Ocean. So we'll continue to track that. One person is dead and 3 others are recovering after a landslide struck the city of Ketchikan in Alaska. Authorities say 3 people were taken to a medical center. The landslide hit the areas of Ketchikan Gateway and Ketchikan City yesterday afternoon, damaging infrastructure top to bottom. A mandatory evacuation was issued as Alaska's governor declared an emergency for the city. The mayor says another landslide is still possible. And an American tourist killed today when an ice cave in Iceland collapsed. His female companion, also American, was hospitalized with non-life-threatening injuries. The 2 were hit by falling ice. The Americans were part of an organized tour group of 23 people viewing a glacier in the southern part of that country. All other tourists have been accounted for after a brief search for 2 missing people. Authorities believe recent volcano eruptions made part of the caves unstable. And wading through floodwaters up to their chest, you're looking at the devastating aftermath of flooding in Bangladesh, certainly the worst recorded in living memory. Since relentless monsoon rains struck the country on Wednesday, water has inundated 11 districts. As of today, communities home to 1.5 million people there are submerged, and more than 5 million people have been affected by this. Many, of course, displaced by the devastation. At least 20 people have died. The Bangladeshi government warning that flood conditions could persist if rains continue because water levels are receding very slowly. Tonight, trading attacks, major escalation at Israel's northern border between IDF forces and Lebanese militant group Hezbollah. The cross-border fire intensity as a ceasefire deal in Gaza appears to be falling apart. Hamas rejecting the most recent proposal presented, accusing Israel of creating new demands. Still, negotiations to get a truce in place set to continue this week in Cairo. U.S. officials, including President Joe Biden, described last week's conversations as, quote, constructive, despite Israeli and Hamas leaders seeming to contradict that tone. Concerns tonight that a regional war is a real possibility. The Pentagon ordering 2 carrier strike groups with accompanying warships to remain in the region to support Israel as the U.S. prepares for more retaliation from Iran against Israeli and U.S. interests over the killing of a senior Hamas leader. In your health alert tonight, a newer kind of laser therapy that can help reduce a common birthmark often seen in children. Medical reporter Liz Bonas shares how it can lighten what's often called a port wine stain or discoloration on the skin.
Hey there, everybody. This newer laser therapy allows you to tailor treatment to hit an area around a vessel. So your own immune system then will help shrink what is needed underneath your skin to take care of a problem maybe seen on the surface of it.
You can treat port wine stains that are more pink on the face as they get to red.
Dr. Elizabeth Munich of Ohio's Dermatology and Skincare Associates says these vascular lasers can be fine-tuned to treat these port wine stains, or capillary malformations as they're known, in a non-invasive way.
So capillary malformations are malformations from birth, and they leave somewhat of a disfiguring, very obvious mark.
She examines the area carefully.
You want to look in this? It's really cool.
To be able to see the depth of the color.
This is a capillary malformation. It's very mild.
This allows her to select or fine-tune the vascular settings.
Let's do 10 millimeter.
And zap the area of the malformation.
So you see it's going to be real bright.
On the surface of the skin.
That goes through the pigmented part of the skin, and then it hits the vessel.
As it hits the vessel underneath the area with the discoloration.
What do you think?
Just feels like you get pinched.
It causes an injury around the underlying vessel. Over time, then, your immune system will degrade that, and it will go away.
It just looks pink, so if you take your goggles off, see how it looks like a sunburn? Yeah, that's it.
You can usually see results of a lighter tone right away.
Yeah, it looks already a little bit better.
Now, this can reoccur in a younger person, and then it needs to be treated again. But you can have similar good results even years later. And in most cases, this is covered by your medical insurance plan. With your health news, I'm Liz Bonas reporting.
Nearly 10,000 cases of apple juice have been recalled because of high levels of inorganic arsenic. Potentially harmful amounts were found in 8-ounce bottles of Great Value brand apple juice sold in 6-packs. The product was sold in the states that you see right there on your screen. The FDA saying the juice may cause temporary health issues, but probably won't lead to serious problems. SpaceX's Polaris Dawn is a go for launch early tomorrow morning with a chance to make space history. With a launch window between 3:38 and 7:38 a.m., billionaire Jared Isaacman looking to become the first civilian to conduct a spacewalk on the third day of the trip. Crew members Sarah Gillis and Anna Menon are also set to make the all-time altitude records for women in space before then returning back to Earth on Friday. The exciting news comes as NASA decided that the 2 Starliner astronauts will have to extend their planned 1-week stay aboard the International Space Station until next February. NASA says it is too risky for Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams to return in the Boeing Starliner capsule that suffered helium leaks in its thrusters when it launched 3 months ago. Retired NASA astronaut Leroy Chow says that the good thing about this situation is that the astronauts are both very experienced and they remain professional.
They've both flown long-duration missions. They know how to operate on the space station, and they're going to be fine. And, the bottom line, too, is astronauts like to be in space. And even though this is going to impact their personal plans, it's never bad for an astronaut to be in space.
Well, coming up, several states are suing to end a program that could help illegal immigrants become citizens, while some call the lawsuit reprehensible. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America. Texas and 15 other states are suing the Department of Homeland Security, the DHS secretary, and other officials to end a new federal program that could help nearly 500,000 illegal immigrants who are married to U.S. citizens get a path to citizenship. Under the policy, many spouses can apply for something called parole in place, allowing them to stay in the country while they apply for a green card. The lawsuit, which claims the program incentivizes illegal immigration, is getting a lot of criticism, including from El Paso Representative Veronica Escobar.
I think what the state of Texas and other states are doing with regard to trying to literally separate families is reprehensible.
Ever since Nadine Young lost her granddaughter to Kaya Young, colors have a new significance.
I got the gold balloons because she's golden to me, the purple because she's royalty, period. I mean, she means a whole lot.
And she has her hair blue now, like Takaya's. It's been a year since Blendon Township police officer Connor Grubb shot and killed Takaya Young after she was accused of stealing from a liquor store. 365 days of the feeling of loss for those closest to her, and family grieving the loss of what was to come with Takaya being pregnant when she died.
We lost 2 people at one time. And we were really anxiously waiting for that baby to come. She was ready for that little girl.
Friends gathering and continuing to move on. This being the first time of bringing the community together to honor Takaya since Grubb's indictment on murder charges a week and a half ago.
Can't get me now, mosquitoes!
Playing on the swings is one way Aiden keeps the mosquitoes at bay. He isn't the only one who isn't fond of them.
Well, I definitely get bit more than she does. They weren't too bad today. There's a little breeze.
Mosquitoes can carry dangerous illnesses like the Eastern equine encephalitis and West Nile virus, which can be very harmful to humans. The most recent mosquito samples collected earlier this month did not find any mosquitoes carrying diseases. But previous testing has shown a significant risk here in Washington County and an elevated risk level throughout Rhode Island. Previously this season, Rhode Island confirmed 17 EEE virus findings and 5 WNV findings. So the state is now recommending what's called smart scheduling to prevent bites. They're asking cities and towns to consider rescheduling games, practices, and other outdoor activities that would happen during early morning or dusk hours to earlier in the afternoon or indoors.
This is Red Sox catcher Danny Jensen, and he made Major League Baseball history this afternoon when the Boston Red Sox and the Toronto Blue Jays resumed playing a rain-suspended game that began all the way back on June 26th. When the game started 2 months ago, Jensen was at the plate batting for the Toronto Blue Jays when umpires called time in the second inning. He was traded to Boston last month. He took the field today as Boston's catcher, making him the first player ever to play for both teams in one game. The final scorecard will be headed to the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York, to commemorate this very unique achievement. Pretty cool. Thank you so much for joining us for this edition of the National Desk. Have a great night.